Welcome to Inner Peace, Better Health, where we explore the truths that guide us inward and so we can grow outward. I'm your host, Saima, and tonight's guest is Andrea Johnson, known as an Intentional Optimist, a powerhouse coach helping female leaders reconnect with their deepest truths. Andrea's work is all about core values, not as trendy buzzwords, but as spiritual anchors that grounds us in clarity, confidence, and healing. Now, if you've ever felt disconnected from your path, your power, or your peace, this episode is a soul level reset. So, Andrea, you believe core values aren't just professional tools, they're spiritual tools, right? So, how did that realization first show up in your own life?
Well, thank you for being here, and I love that introduction. You have hit
Mhm.
the nail on the head, Saima. Thank you so much. Um,
Well,
yeah, because a lot of people don't understand core values. A lot of people think they are the things we value, the beliefs that we hold, and that's not what they are. So I started this work many years ago, but I didn't know what I was doing. And I started with the book by, I think it was it's the book that comes with the Franklin Covey system by Stephen Covey, and I think it might be the 7 Habits, but he had me put together at the end of the book, there was this exercise to put together your governing values, and I still have that list today. If we were on video, I would show it to you. It's laminated with packing tape that tells you how old I am, but it is one of the things that kind of started me on that journey, and as I grew through personal development and leadership development and through management and in my work in university systems and managing people. And then moving into a coach setting, I realized, wait a minute, this core value thing is bigger than I thought. And I love getting root cause analysis for things. So I love data and I love figuring out why we do what we do. And the more I looked at my own, the more I realized this is half the work that I need to do on myself to grow and be who I need to be was because I was not honoring my core values. So it really started, like a lot of coaches and teachers, with working on myself and then being able to translate that into working with other people.
that's really noteworthy. So, what changed once you started honoring those values with intention?
Well, what basically teach people is a lot of times when you do any values work, if you do core values work with other people talk about setting boundaries that are usually outside of ourselves. They talk about having other people or aligning your core values to your business values or something. And what I find is that when we try to align with something outside ourselves, we're automatically not aligning with what's inside ourselves. And so I talk about honoring our core values rather than aligning. And that is a fundamental shift for most people because most of us are programmed and taught and conditioned to think that all the good stuff, Simon, is outside, right? And what I'm here to teach, right, I'm here to teach people is that no, the good stuff is inside and we need to get it to where people can see it. So when I personally started honoring my core values, turned out my top core value is freedom of thought. And so for me, working in a large university was very difficult because I had to adhere to certain rules and regulations. I had to meet certain criteria that really just I didn't believe in, and I didn't want to manage people that way. And so for me, it helped me step away from that work and do different kind of work. When I work with my clients, almost to a person, they talk about moving away from this sense of lack of fulfillment in their work or lack of fulfillment in their jobs to a sense of feeling like what they do is valuable and fulfilling because at the end of the day, they know that they're doing work that when you instead of aligning our core values with something outside, we align what we do with our core values and honor them. And all of a sudden, we feel fulfilled in what we do. And on a personal level, it means our relationships are deeper. It means my husband, for example, loves for people to agree with him. We all like that. But when I told him, hey, my top core value is being able to think for myself, he no longer starts sentences with things like, wouldn't you agree that, because he's just looking for consensus. And so he's learned to start saying things like, what do you think about this? And when he does that, it frees me up to be able to listen to his side and listen to my side and figure things out, and sometimes we agree and sometimes we don't. So when you can honor your core values, you get more fulfillment out of the work that you do, you get deeper relationships. And the other piece is that you get really clear boundaries. When when you build a house, you put a door on the front. And for most of us, especially here in the Western world, people don't just walk up to your door and walk in. I grew up in Korea, and so there was walls around the houses, which made the boundaries even more clear. But people don't walk up to my front door and just walk in; they knock. I mean, that's how it is here in the United States, and so I think culturally, there's a few things that definitely transfer. So having a good understanding of your core values is a little bit like being able to put up a house because you're confident in who you are. And so people automatically see that as a door, and it's you don't have to like tell them to stay over there. It's your boundaries become self-evident rather than something that you have to like erect on your own. Does that make sense?
That completely makes sense. And where that shift is everything from
Oh yeah.
chasing roles to embodying purpose, that's where true healing begins.
Absolutely, and it's beautiful to watch. It's so fun to watch the light bulb come on over a client's head or to have somebody in a workshop say, "Oh, if I did this with my employee instead of that, it would make a difference." Yes, it would. And to just even to have my own ability to say, wow, I started a master's degree 30 years ago and I haven't finished it. And one of the reasons why is because I just didn't have the ability to think for myself in certain areas. And now I think this year at the age of 58, I'm going to go finish it and maybe get a PhD. So those kind of shifts are just really empowering.
That's indeed empowering and beautiful to watch, Andrea. Now, many people adopt values that they think they should have. So, how can someone discern which values are, truly their own?
Mm, that's so true. And it's a really good question. I come up
Mhm.
against that almost every time I work with somebody. And I think that goes back to what I said initially is that we are conditioned in our society to think that all the good stuff is outside of ourselves. And what's interesting is that many times what we have inside is actually better than some of the things that we're aspiring to. And I also teach that we have assumptions, beliefs, and conditioning. And a lot of people's values that they're aspiring to are really more like beliefs and or maybe they're aspirational goals. And so what I like to tell people is when we're going to do this work, we're going to look inside and it's going to be something that that you might be surprised at, but you probably won't be. Right. So for me, I for years have said I just want to be me. So it's not a big surprise that thinking of myself and authenticity are core values. But for somebody else who's very team oriented, to think that responsibility, find out that responsibility is a core value is not a surprise either. And what's interesting is that a lot of times when we understand what our own core values are and kind of walk away from or say, I don't have to aspire to these other things, we can see who we are and see that we're already probably honoring some of those things, or some of them are things that we don't need to aspire to. Everybody has a system. Everybody has a system of how we're going to get things done, how we're going to maybe work in an organization together. And sometimes we need to understand that working in an organization with our own core values may not be the best fit for us. Like I said, I left the university system because I realized it wasn't a good fit for me. I could still contribute a lot there, and I'm learning how to do that in different ways through teaching and through some curriculum development. But working in the area of administration and management is not a good fit for me. And it made everybody miserable. So when you listen to someone like me, because I also have the 6 tenets of intentional optimism, which first we work on who we are, which is our core values. Then we work on or look at how we communicate and what we want to do. And then the last thing, and that I use that I'm a DISC consultant. So that's an assessment that we use to understand our wiring. But the third piece we look at in my work is how we do what we do. And I have a system, it's called intentional optimism. It's 6 tenets, and it's things that I would aspire to. And they're things like being optimistic, present, energetic, courageous, wise, and intentional. And those are all wonderful things to aspire to, but they're going to show up differently in my life than they would in yours because you have a different personality and you have different core values. So, a lot of times, what we're doing is we're taking a system of principles and putting them on us and calling them our values, and we're doing ourselves a disservice because we're literally telling ourselves how to do something, but we don't know who we are and why we're doing it. So what I usually work with people on is, okay, that's great, these are systems that you can try, and I never tell people they have to do intentional optimism. I say this is something that you could use if you prefer to use some other leadership person's principles because they work better for you. Let's make that work, right? Let's figure out how to do that, because a lot of times the things that we should aspire to or that we're told we should value, the number one thing that people should value is family, right? And here in the United States, it's like faith, family, country, whatever, and it's like those are all really good things to value, but when I say family is a core value, it probably is something deeper like belonging or a sense of responsibility or a sense of connectedness. And when I can see that, I can say, oh, okay, so family is something that I aspire to and I want to be involved with and I want to be present because of my core value of belonging. That's where I belong. And this is how I show up with belonging. Does that help?
That's really remarkable. That's surely going to be beneficial for all our listeners out there, Andrea.
I hope so. It's a very, very common thing, especially when we're getting into organizational values. And I think my next body of work that I'm going to be doing is the difference between a core value and a aspirational value, or like the principles that we live. And then how do you work all of that in together with organizational values? Because an organization like a job or a civic organization or a religion has certain things that they want us to aspire to. And so, how do we honor ourselves while still aspiring to all of those things and kind of coming up with definitions for them? So, maybe if I come back on here again, I'll be able to share that part of my work.
Yeah, sure, Andrea. So, can you share a common trap you see people fall into when defining their values?
Oh, you've already touched on one of them. A very common trap is thinking there's certain things that they're supposed to value. Another common trap is falling into this idea that what's inside me is not necessarily good and that I'm supposed to suppress it. And, especially in Western culture, it's like people think that women in Western culture can be really loud and really strong, but it's not as common as you think. So we're very what I call conditioned. And the trap of not looking at the things that we already, I call them ABCs, that we assume, we believe, and we are conditioned for, if we're not willing to break those things down and look at them, that is a trap that we can fall into and then get lost in values that are really not our own. So the two biggest traps I see are thinking there's certain values that we're supposed to have, and then the other one is not being willing to actually break down the conditioning and the beliefs and kind of jettison some of that. It's I would call it deconstructing those kinds of things, and it can be a little scary, but as long as you're willing to do the work, it is so worth it.
So true. Leaving someone else values of like, wearing shoes two sizes too small. You can work but not thrive, no?
Yeah, I mean, two sizes too small, or like a little kid putting on their mom's shoes, 10 sizes too big. And it doesn't mean that one is better or worse. It just means it's not the right size for you. And I like that analogy because it's not even, if you want to take it even further, it's not even just the size of the shoe, it's the style. I have a friend who cannot wear heels. And then I'm one of those people who or she can't wear flats. And I'm one of those people who loves flats. And so we might have the same size shoe, but we have to wear different ones that fit the way we need to walk and the body that we have. So I love that. That's a really good analogy.
Hmm? Yeah, absolutely, exactly. Now, you coach women to lead with confidence and conviction. So, how does being rooted in values, shift someone's leadership presence?
I think being rooted in honoring your core values gives you the ability to be confident in ways that any other training doesn't give you. And when you know who you are, you're not afraid to say, I don't know the answer. When you know who you are, you're not afraid to say, hey, let's work on this together. As a leader, being able to not just serve other people and lead other people and tell them what to do, You need to be able to collaborate with others. You need to be able to see the best idea in the room. You need to be able to give other people the credit for things. You need to be able to cast a vision. And when you have confidence, you can do those things, or you can recognize where you might have it's not your personality. It's like you have your strengths and your weaknesses. And when you have confidence, when you understand who you are, the confidence that you have gives you the ability to say, hey, this is an area that I'm not good at. Let me bring somebody else on here in my team that's going to give us the ability to round out this leadership and make sure that we lead well for everyone. So I think that that is the best way I can describe it, is it just gives you an unshakable confidence to be able to be yourself, which means you can then lead with integrity and humility and authority.
I love that. Confidence doesn't come from faking it, but from facing who we really are, right?
Yes, well said. Very well said.
Mm-hmm. Now, like, what message do you have for the woman listening who feels like her voice doesn't matter?
So, here in the United States, we have some pretty big holiday meals. We have Thanksgiving, we have Christmas. What's a big holiday meal that you guys have?
It's like various festivals, like religional festivals,
Yep.
Eid, Holi, Diwali.
Yes. Yes. Okay. That's a perfect example. There's specific
Mhm.
foods that you want at those festivals, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
And if one of the specific foods is missing, it's not
Mhm.
quite right. Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And and everybody's disappointed. For us,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
a sweet potato dish or stuffing or a specific type of poultry um, or dessert or something. And when one of those things is missing, we feel like we've been kind of like short changed. And so what I tell people is, if your voice happens to be that special dish, if your voice
Mhm.
happens to be that one piece, that it may be a dessert or maybe a side dish, but everybody else is going to miss out if you don't bring it to the table. And it may be that you're not the person that stands up on the table and like shouts everything. It may be that you're the person who brings the special spice. It brings the special drink or the special dessert to the meal, and everybody benefits. And so when women tell me, "Well, I don't know that my voice matters," I'm like, "Do you have any children?
Mhm.
Do you have a spouse? Your voice matters to them for sure. And
Mhm.
if your voice matters to them, it's going to matter to everybody else." And because we're all unique, especially in our core values, we all have a unique message. And bringing that unique message is what makes the festival of life enjoyable. It's what makes it well rounded. And so, to each and every person, I say, you don't all have to be shouters. You don't all have to be someone speaking on a stage. You don't all have to be the leader. But knowing that your voice matters is extremely important.
That's a call to rise, Andrea. When one woman stands in the truth, it lifts all of us.
Exactly. Exactly.
Hmm. Andrea, thank you for reminding us that leadership isn't just about what we do, it's about who we are. And to everyone listening, your values are not just a compass, they are your calling. Honor them, leave them, and watch them. Healing unfold. Until next time, lead with light, love your truth, and keep creating peace from the inside out.